Welcome to another episode of the ASQ podcast, where we focus on life, leadership, and culture. In this inspiring episode, we sit down with Fredric Cole, a friend of over 20 years and the current CEO of Energende, an international utility-scale renewable energy developer. Join us as we explore Fred's incredible personal transformation journey and how it shaped his life, leadership, and career. Stay tuned.
Family was really from Philadelphia, and so I was born there, right, many moons ago. And we moved to Los Angeles, to the West Coast, right, when I was 3. I was so young that I don't even remember the move.
Wow.
They drove out there, right? This was 1972, I think it was.
Oh.
And my dad was a musician, and he had opportunities that were, supposedly promising for him from his brother, who was also a musician. And so westward they went.
All right.
I'm pretty happy too to have grown up on the West Coast. Right.
Okay.
There's a lot of different influences out there that I think about, and some good, some bad, but all of it mixed up in a pot. I love the warm weather. I love the beach.
Yeah.
Right. The beach is probably still my favorite place. Right.
Yeah.
So my family was a blended family. Okay. My father came in with 4 girls. And my mother already had 3 when they got married.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
3
so
girls?
there's 7 girls.
Oof, yeah.
And then they had my brother and me together. Okay.
Wow.
So now there's a total of 9, and an extra friend. So it's 10 people out in Los Angeles. Yeah, it's just a kind of
Wow.
big family.
It's like
really good family life, right?
Okay.
Whether my parents had a lot of money or not or anything, we were never left for wanting.
Okay.
It wasn't like weren't eating cereal with water in it, kind of stuff, right? There was gifts under the tree at Christmas time. There was my brother and I went to private school, right, which definitely had a big influence and effect on our outcomes and all, and so on. But my mother always preached to us, family is who you got. You can't choose your friends, right? You can't choose your family. Excuse me. You can choose. You can't choose your family. You can choose your friends.
Yeah.
Right. So family is all you got when you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And
That's
throughout
true.
my life, in certain times when have been in that point, like, oh my goodness, right? Family just jumps right up and no problem. We got you.
Right
and all
away.
that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So. Of course, there's very rare friends, right? Present company included that will rise to that. But that's when I say rare, I'm really putting emphasis on the word rare because, most people are like, sorry. Well, that's too bad that happened to you. But most of my sisters, because they were older, getting back to your question, they were more like mothers to me, right?
Okay.
The youngest of my sisters, I remember when she was in high school, but it wasn't too long after where she was already driving, right? And she was off to college, right? So the fact that she could drive and the fact that we were new to Southern California, the beach was like 20 minutes away.
Nice.
This is Los Angeles in the early 70s, low traffic, There was no traffic in the morning and traffic in the evening, and that's it.
Wow.
So the beach is free, pack up sandwiches and da-da-da-da-da, and then my other sister already had a kid, who was like my brother, Michael, right? He was just a few years behind me, and off we were to the beach. We would spend all day there, right? They'd be reading, probably detoxing from life's problems.
Yeah.
Also, being at the beach, I learned to not be afraid of the beach, right? I knew how to swim. I could get out there and jump in those waves and boogie board and not be afraid of that, which... unfortunately is kind of a stigma, I think, that's now going away in Black culture. Right? I'm seeing more and more swimmers out there and so on, but there's still, for years, was, not knowing how to swim. Going to the beach, approaching waves that are crashing down and all that kind of stuff. I knew how to deal with that as a kid. I wasn't afraid of it and all that kind of stuff. So, thinking back, some of that probably, had an effect. My dad... was a musician, right? And so that makes things a little bit interesting as an artist, right? He was a musician, and then he, ultimately became a teacher, right, to augment his salary amongst doing other things, right? So we always. Everybody basically at some point in their life played an instrument, right?
Okay. What was your instrument?
Well, I played piano, I played saxophone, clarinet, basically the whole string of woodwind instruments.
Oh, wow. Nice.
I think that my dad was just like, everybody's gonna learn how to do this, which was ultimately he was right.
Yeah.
Right. By doing that, I understand music on a different level, right? Okay. I can understand key changes and chords and vocals and harmonies and you really understand mechanically how music works. And Omar, we were talking about this a little bit earlier about, there's something inside of music that's unexplainable that science can't even explain.
Correct.
That moves us, right?
Yeah, agreed.
That also time stamps us too, right? But my dad was a musician. Like he was always, incredibly talented, right? I think that's how he won over my mother at some point. My mom said he had written and played a song for her.
Oh, wow.
That she said it was amazing.
Wow.
You know?
Aw, how sweet. He serenaded her?
Right.
Aww.
Absolutely.
So sweet.
That's what we do as men.
Yeah.
And if I know your mom, she's not going to be taken easily, so it had to be a good song.
She was, because she was coming in with 3 kids. So she came out of divorce, and that couldn't have been easy. I know that on some level she had to struggle with 3 kids. So here's my dad coming in, he said, well, I've got 4 girls too. And, here we go. So, he was just, there were a lot of times when we had to be very quiet in the house.
Oh, okay.
Because he was either writing music or playing music. And, kids, we'd come in the house and slam the door. Slam! He was like, cut all that. He'd open up the studio door, right, where he had his piano and all that kind of stuff in there. And so, and then at some point, he was like, all right, get in here. You're going to start learning how to play music. And then we started getting the lessons. I think the first thing I started playing was guitar. I learned how to play guitar. Went to guitar lessons, and learned how to do strumming and picking and the chords, all that kind of stuff, right? And then moved on to what we call the woodwinds, right? Saxophone, clarinet, that family of instruments. And because he came along during this era of jazz music, right? I think he was greatly influenced, not only by the piano, right, but the saxophone. He used to always tell me that one of his good friends, right, that he grew up with, he grew up with John Coltrane.
Oh, wow.
Which, he wrote out the saxophone part and had me playing John Coltrane. I used to get in there and play with him together in the studio. It's very, very difficult music, right?
Yeah.
If you listen to John Coltrane, the guy's incredible, right? So those influences, yes, come from my dad, right? The artistic side, pragmatic woodworking, right? He was very, very handy with tools. He could figure out how to do anything around the house.
Nice.
So, we built our own ping pong tables.
Oh, wow.
We bought a couple, but then we built he was like, come on, we're going to build we went, got the wood, sanded it down, and, measured and painted.
Painted the lines.
The whole bit, right?
Yeah.
We were a big ping pong family. That was,
nice.
That was heavy duty. Somebody just sent me a picture from long ago. It was my dad holding a ping pong table. I was like, yep, that was,
That's neat.
It was heavy and amongst the guys in our group,
Wow.
And I was pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, I still am. Could be pretty fierce on the table as well. I started watching U.S. TV over, in Saudi where I live. And I just got finished watching, the French Open.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm watching it every day. And I was just like, yep, I could watch tennis all day. And I do. Sometimes I either have Bloomberg on or I have the tennis channel. Yeah, I mean, we grew up playing tennis in the hood, right down where the Williams sisters started playing down there. The same courts, right? And it was rare, right, to see black people out there playing, but there were black people out there playing tennis, and it was great. It was really fun for a very long time, right? To the hand-eye coordination and so on. So, of course, I left it eventually.
Yeah,
and then to us, it was to me, it's normal. You know, not everybody else in my neighborhood. I kind of knew that, you know, other families didn't do that. I just kind of thought that everybody just had their own thing.
Yeah.
You know, every family was different.
It never occurred to you that there was like this a racial thing or black people don't play tennis or whatever. It was
that never popped
Yeah.
into my head.
Yeah.
I think because it probably could have, but my parents never paid it any attention.
Yeah.
Therefore, I never paid it. They never made it a thing.
Right.
My mom, right, side of the family, they're very fair-skinned, right? My mom could almost pass for being white on some occasion. I do remember as a kid being like in a doctor's office, you know, and the woman like looking at my mother and looking at me and like, mother, like, is that your kid? You know, but it's like my daughter. Our faces are too similar not to deny it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like, obviously that's a kid, but the skin tones are different, and she looks white, but this guy.
Yeah.
So but that overall, no, I never really felt. I mean, you know, we had a lot of fun when we were kids. You know, skateboarding, right? That was all born out. I was right when I was coming along. You know.
And the West Coast.
On the West Coast, Venice Beach was right there in the middle of it. Vans shoes was nowhere else but out there. We were wearing them when I was 10 years old, you know, before it spread around the world. Now, you know, it's everywhere. It's a global trend, right? That has come back in full. I think Nike owns them now or something like that. I think the gang thing, right, and even historically, right, didn't really start to rise up in full force until like the early 80s. So now I'm like 10, 11 years old. And, you know, on the street, what are you? Are you blood or cuz? You know, that was immediately, right, starting to rise to the pile. And, you know, neighborhoods where you lived at, you got to be careful where you go because you're not known over there. And you got to be careful what color you're wearing, you know, and how you dress. I think, you know, the gang culture got its identity, you know, by identification. So you know who the bangers were. Right? You could spot them a mile away. The problem was, did they cross the street if they saw you coming? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You know, that's where it got interesting. I was like, well, this is about to, you know, you're about to get it on, you know, and you're about to, the term was, you know, you're about to get sweated, right? What are you doing over here? What up, Bloods? And they what they would say, right, is they would say like, "What up, Blood?" And either if you were the opposite, then you would be like, "Ain't no blood, I'm blood." You know, so that was the initiation, right? It wasn't like, "Hey, you know, what are you doing over here?" It's like, "What's up, cuz?" And it just, that's the immediate opening. Okay, the line is drawn. Which side are you on? Okay. And so I had the ball. I was down the middle. Man, I ain't banging. And usually that was enough. Sometimes if it wasn't, and you had to scrabble, right? There was plenty of that going on. A lot of fights. Jumped, take your stuff, your money, whatever. I saw a guy coming through when I came through the airport this morning. His pants. I mean, basically they just halfway down between his waist and his knees. Like, and I was like, how are you walking?
How?
All of your underwear. So like, it's gone beyond, you know, just a little bit, right? And just to tell you culturally, right? When we were coming along, you know, sagging, that was a respect to the big guys up in Folsom. Not county jail. Prison.
Wow.
Folsom. You ain't coming out for a long time because you could not have, you know, belts and shoestrings and weapons. So they got their clothes really big and they started sagging. Right. That's where it came from. You know. Mexicans didn't. They wore their pants up high-waisted, very tight. It was a black belt, had a round little kind of mother of pearl circle in it, if I remember correctly, right? Or the little metal clip that they had big pants, but it was the opposite, right? And the Nike Cortez, right? That was their look. Of course, the plaid thing and that kind of, you know, everybody wore that, but the pants was, I think, the bigger difference, right? That's where sagging came from. So when I travel around the world and I see that at times, I'm just like,
you don't understand.
It's a prison mentality. Like, that's where it comes from. And you have to realize it's respect to guys who are in prison, probably for murder and all this stuff. Really think about where it comes from. But now it's I'm sure she kind of felt, but I just never told her.
Gotcha.
I just like, oh yeah, I saw a couple of guys get shot, or they were shooting, or they were, we were World on Wheels, which is a big, gang place, and schoolyard crip, and then, whoever else would show up, and bam, 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 off it popped off.
Yeah.
I doubt my parents.
Your parents.
No, without question, they were not going to have it. Right? I think. Because they were both born, right, World War II, right, came along in that era, right after probably the Great Depression.
Yes.
So, Black identity is now on the upswing from there. There's oppression, but now there are GI Bill, they're coming home, all these things. Jackie Robinson, there's now this, it's beginning to crescendo towards Martin Luther King, right? And so what they, I think, wanted was to make sure that, hey, as a minority, as a Black person, you're going to face problems, but we're going to make sure you are well equipped, right, for to exist and to succeed, right, in future society down here in America, right, and that included how you talked, how you ate, how you behaved, how you sat at the table, all of these kind of things. But also, remember, I went to private school, right?
Yes.
Everybody else, except for the Manuel, the Mexican kid, he went to private school, Catholic school as well, right? But all the rest of the Black kids went to public school, right? So that was a major difference, right? My school, very, very tiny, as part of a church, right? A Lutheran school, maybe 8 grades, 100 kids in it, and my class had kids everywhere. Melissa, the Hawaiian kid, Adrian, the Mexican guy, June, the Korean kid. It was like that. It was just kind of one of everything, and we just all were together. My elementary pictures, you see just a all different kind of faces in there.
Colors.
Rainbow, first grade, second grade, they're all the way through. And that had a lot of effect on it too. So I started early on. Talk to everybody.
So how was like middle and high school then for you? Did you were you in LA for all of this?
I was in Los Angeles for all of it. Junior high was interesting because I went to a school where my father had just finished teaching at. Oh. Right? So his name was very fresh. Oh, you're Tom's kid. All that kind of stuff. And it was a Mexican kids school, mostly Mexican schools over in their neighborhood, right? And it was also when MS-13 started coming up. The Salvadorians. It was 1984.
Yeah.
So think about what's going on politically, right?
Yes.
CIA is down there. And why are all these Salvadorians, right? And all of a sudden, you started to see this new tag on the wall, MS-13.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Marra Salvatrucha. There was fights on the streets, because these guys were pushing in from the older established Mexican gangs that were Harpies, Playboy, 18th Street. All these gangs were well established, right, in these neighborhoods. And here, the Salvadorians are now pushing in, right? I was there during that time when it started to begin. And but again, managed to kind of stay away from it. It was there. You saw it. It's unfortunate. But again, this was all part of living in that neighborhood and growing up. You just kind of learn how to avoid.
So although you were introduced to these types of things, even you got older, middle school into high school, you still had that presence of mind to.
They just would not have it. You're not talking like that in this house.
Gotcha.
And she was right. At the end of the day, they were so right on every single level. I'm sure some things that were wrong, but I know what they were trying to do.
Of course.
Again, I went to another school, and this time my dad was there, right, at this school. I went to Belmont High School, right?
He was actually teaching there.
He was there, and that was just a nightmare.
I was going to say, how was that?
It's good because, my parents are divorced by this time, and so we get to see each other all the time and playing tennis. I'm playing tennis still and playing music. I'm in the band and all this stuff, right? But I could do no wrong. I could not drop a piece of paper without hearing about it,
At the school?
At the school.
Okay.
So, because teachers, right, they talk, they get together, they have a lounge. Fourth period Spanish class, that's what it was, right? So fourth period was the period before lunch, okay? and it was Spanish class. Raul sat in front. I never will forget it. Sat in front of me, and I think he sat in the first seat, right, on the row like that, and then I was second. And I just always remembered, like, he would be tapping me on the shoulder. He would point to the door. I would look, there's my dad. And that meant come down to my office, and it wasn't good. I was like, oh, Christ. I see you got a C on this test. Or what's going on? Just like every other day, it felt like.
Man.
You know, and then we were cool. Then we go down to the tennis court. Okay, but like it was over.
Yeah.
You know, so it was just mixed feelings, you know. But, yeah, then I wanted to go to a different school, right? Had the bigger programs and all this kind of stuff. So I kind of switched and went out there, and I had to get away from that because somebody had mentioned to me the other day, it's their mother works at the school and their daughter's going there. I said, sure.
Yeah.
It's a little tough.
It's a little tough,
because you get the kid, it's so much pressure on the kid.
It is.
To not do anything wrong, to not
get in trouble.
Yeah. And I don't want to say, okay, whether it's trouble or whatever, but let's just call it being a kid. I was being tapped on the shoulder because I was trying to turn around and talk to some girl behind me or something. I should have been paying attention this way, which I would have seen him. And that's what I'm saying. I never will forget it, Raul. And I would turn around and he would say like that. And then I look at there's my dad. And
Hey, Raul.
I guess I kind of knew that it was going to come. My grandmother had moved in with us, I think when I was about 12 or 11, somewhere around there. I can't remember exactly. But my dad and my grandmother did not get along. Okay? They just did not. I think, you know, my grandmother was very tough and she's very hard on men and boys, right? And girls were sugar and boys. It's old school like that. Right? Girls can do no wrong, right? But I think that the insistence that I was always doing something wrong is probably, you know, the disposition of my grandmother, which, you know, was sometimes right and sometimes wrong. You know, I know sometimes I was difficult to deal with, right?
Curious
kid. I had my fair share. I busted my brother's head open with a phone one time over a video game. I just think that I could tell that they didn't get along and they were always kind of bickering and arguing and so on. And it just came as no surprise. Okay. Let's put it like that, right? It's my mom came home and I came home from summer. I used to go down to my sister's house down in San Diego, right? And spend the summer down there. Nice. And I came back and she was like, well, your dad and I are gotten separated. We're getting divorced. And, you know, she's my mom's very straightforward. Right, you can decide who you want to live with, and the dad and I was like, "No, I want to live with you."
Oh, Mom,
I know my mom was the rock. You know, it was. I think that was pretty clear, right? My mom kind of, you know, disciplinarian and had it all together. I think he, you know, I don't think he was. I don't think he was aloof. If that's what you're, Some people tend to think of arts type of people as aloof. I don't ever recall. You know, I just know he was, you know, pretty bitter at race relations and you know, the way certain things were, you know, they're perceivably moving or probably what he went through, right? You know, like I said, it was very tough for black people back when he was a kid. And, you know, now he's looking at me, you know, running wild probably and just freedoms and talking in ways that he you know, and doing things that he probably never imagined would ever happen, but it is what it is, you know, and probably didn't have the modern day experience that we now have as parents, where we have lots of literature and all of these different things and theories and understand the human mind and so forth and development of the mind and the child. And now we have all of these tools in our arsenal. So we're, you know, slightly different parents, right? Yeah. Probably still the same on many different levels. Sure. So, you know, it's always, you know, you want certain things for your kids and how to behave and, you know, but how to deal with modern things in modern society, right? There's a lot of research and study on things on which we should or shouldn't be doing as far as parenting and so forth. So I don't remember him being like kind of anything. He was just, my dad was just very pragmatic. Okay. Very, you know, straightforward. Loved his music, loved tennis, and that, you know, not too much else outside of that. Drawing, he clearly loved to draw.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
He's good. Yeah. I'll work it backwards.
Okay.
One day, I get a notice to go to the office. What? Not the office? What's wrong? What's wrong here? Right. I go there. There's my mom sitting in the office with that look on her face.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Like, oh boy. Like I don't know how. Like, she just had a look on her face like, I'm just going to kill you. And then there was on the guy, the counselor, whoever it was, on his desk were all the handwritten notes that I had written to get out of class. And so my mom just picks them up. Please excuse Fred for da-da-da-da-da. Fred cannot come to class today because signed Barbara Cole. Fred,
oh my
so
goodness.
there's probably about 25 notes there handwritten from me, right? And which I was out partying, ditch day and all that kind of stuff. Hey man, we had fun.
Definitely.
So I did all of that stuff. I paid the price. Right?
Okay.
Pretty heavy.
What do you mean?
I did not graduate high school, right? I came to a point where I was just like, I don't know what, I cannot tell you what I was thinking during that time frame, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know what was going through my head. I can't say that it was rebellion. I wasn't angry at anybody. Uh-huh. I wasn't angry at my mother, my father. My brother was.
Mm-hmm.
My brother was clearly going through something.
Okay.
A little bit, a few years before me, when I was in high school, junior high school, and he was in high school, right?
Yeah.
He got into some pretty odd stuff, and it was very, very rebellious, anarchy, and punk rock music and all this stuff.
Okay.
Which, by its nature, is rebellious.
Yes. Yeah.
What was my big rebellion? Breakdancing, hip. Rap music, that was everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
It had just come in.
Yeah,
it was our music, right? Our generation. That was our thing. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, R&B and Luther Vandross and all of that kind of stuff. No, this was ours, man.
Yes.
This was, And then West Coast music was, it was there when, shortly after it started in New York and Chicago, right? Because it comes really right from house music, right, out of Chicago into New York into rap. That's kind of the circle, right?
Yep.
So when it came out to us, it had that West Coast flavor, so that was our thing, and so I didn't feel rebellious by that, by that stage. I was just kind of
living in the moment.
Over
girls,
it.
you just whatever.
That's what I think you were just like. I'm
cool.
I don't want to do this. I want to do all this other stuff.
Yeah, right.
That's it.
I know like that's over there, but I'm not ready for that yet.
Okay.
And geez, this is 1987. I was supposed to graduate high school, right? The path in getting into college, right, is not like it is today. The knowledge base, and again, that's out there, and information. So parents, getting their kids at the college, and minorities at that time, was probably a tremendous feat.
Yeah.
Because if your parents didn't go to college, how do you get your kids?
How do you know?
How do you tell them?
How do you tell them what to do?
Well, you got to go to take these classes to do this. And now it's a very established path.
Yes.
Right. AP classes, if you want to go into the top echelon of the schools, it doesn't guarantee you a place, but it gets you, closer than going to this school. Doing the basic load and not the extracurricular. So there's a formula that we now know that is unfortunately, right. Is pretty straightforward, in which will get you into some sort of college somewhere, right?
Correct.
And it starts very, very early these days, right? And so my mother didn't, parents, my sister was, just in, a kid and two kids in front of me had gone, so I saw, oh, wow, here she is out, in college, out, not too far away from us where we lived, about 30 minutes away, right? And I could see myself doing this, but it just wasn't there.
It wasn't at that time.
It just wasn't there. Like I said, I can't remember what I was thinking, but it wasn't anger.
No, it wasn't anger.
I wasn't like, well, screw them. I didn't hate my mother. No, I couldn't understand how white kids, just talked about my mother's such a bitch. Like, I think if I thought that, my mother would slap me. So it was so foreign because they preached family, right? That concept was so foreign to me. But you go to school out in the valley, it's white, and so it was very, very bizarre. So I enjoyed my family, my parents. I can't remember, but what I hear, especially in like in Arab cultures, is this idea of bringing shame to your parents and your family.
Okay.
Right. And Asian cultures, I think there's some cultures, right? Chinese and Japanese especially, right? You bring shame upon the family. That was never expressed.
Okay.
I think the discipline is like you could do so much better. You could be doing.
Yeah.
You could if you just applied yourself, right? That was always kind of a recurring theme. It was like, and I think that's also why I kind of didn't maybe graduate high school. I was a little bored. It just was kind of easy. School just kind of like. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's an issue for a lot of kids. Even nowadays, it's just it's boring.
My daughter,
so they're just like,
Apparently, my ex-wife pulled my daughter out of a school because they kept using her as the model.
Yeah,
she was just so far ahead of the rest of the kids, or for whatever reason it is, and this, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but she said. I was like, why did you pull her out of school? Well, they're using her. They keep using her as the model, and again, I don't like that.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, somebody's got to be top dog, right? The answer to your question is I don't think it was a rebellious thing. For me, it didn't feel like it.
Okay.
I just felt like I was just
having fun.
You were in the moment.
Partying,
Sounds
it was a big party scene out there in LA. Again, now rap music, and it's all starting to really kind of take hold. MTV raps, right? It's just coming along now. And the whole culture, not that I was full flung into it, but but
that was the crescendo, like getting to that.
Yeah, that was getting to that point.
Oh, this is like
I still
crazy.
liked all kind of music back then. I still hung out with everyone.
Yeah.
Regardless of their background. And who you were into, or.
Now, you didn't finish high school, so what happened? Because you're living at home still.
Yep.
So take us there now.
And I was working. I started getting jobs and working. I can't remember what it was why I had to leave. But my mom was like, you got to get out. Probably because I wasn't going to college. It's like, you got to make a decision. Go here or either go live with your dad. I have no idea. Well, I guess I'm going to live with my dad.
Right.
Of course, that wasn't the greatest thing. So my dad is just... he's into what he's into, right? Not a whole lot of conversation about different things.
Okay.
He's starting to get angry and bitter at the world. A lot of complaining. So it's a very kind of negative environment. Today it'd probably be called toxic. Or
Okay.
But whatever, he's still my dad. It's not like terrible. No hatred. No whatever, but this ain't for me.
You don't want to put you don't want to put up with it. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
All right, it's still my dad. Like, whatever. So I'm sitting there watching college football at the time, probably Miami, because Miami was
big in the 80s.
Were winning it big, right?
Yeah.
5 championships during the 80s, right? Jimmy Johnson, and here comes be all that you can be in the Army. That commercial, which I had probably seen 1,000 times. There was a recruiter at high school, a Marine. That guy tried, so hard, and you're gonna get out of here, all of that stuff, the literature there. And here comes that commercial. It's an out.
Yeah.
3 weeks later, I'm signed up. I'm in. From that commercial, about 3 weeks.
Into the Army.
I signed the paperwork.
Into the Army?
I joined the Army.
Okay.
Didn't tell anybody about my dad. My dad was like, yeah, good choice. Because it wasn't too shortly after that I had signed everything that I informed her. So it was Mother's Day. Oh. Right? And, of course, everybody's over my mom's house.
You told her on Mother's Day?
I told her on Mother's Day. Yeah. I'm sitting there, like, so now I've already, like, I'm leaving in a month. Yeah. Right? About a month and a half, June 22nd, I think it was, 2 days after my birthday, I think. And we're all having dinner. Everybody's talking, debating, doing all this stuff.
Like,
family
ding,
dinners.
Ding, ding,
exactly.
ding.
I was like, I got something to say. I was like, I have an announcement. Everybody was like, what
What's you gotta say?
I'm kind of the younger.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a pecking order, but
Looking down the table,
say all the table down here. And I was just flat out. I was like, I joined the Army, and it's silence.
Oh my gosh!
I swear it was like
It's like
just,
a movie.
just hanging out there in the I joined the Army. It's like, what? Everybody's like, no, you didn't. I was like, yes, I did. They were like, no, you did not. You did not join the Army. I was like, yes, I did. I'm going to go work on nuclear missiles. They were like, what?
Wow.
I was like, yeah. So, you know.
And what did she say?
What could she say? She was like, aren't you worried that you're da-da-da-da? And in my head, I was like, all right, you know, it's the 80s, Gorbachev, right? The Russia and
Cold
the whole
War stuff.
Cold War and nukes and Reagan and nukes and Star Wars up into space to shoot the nukes that are going to, all of this crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
I was just like, nobody's going to push the button.
No.
I was like, it ain't going to happen, man. You're not going to just blow, like, it's too much
To lose.
power.
Yeah.
These weapons are too powerful to unleash. If you unleash them, it is, you know, and what I learned, because I did, my first job was I worked on nuclear warheads, right? The Pershing missiles, right? And one of the last steps that this was a mobile missile, not the things that are underground silos. These are on the back of a truck, right? There's these two pin locks that are on the side that prevent from rising up, the entire thing from the back of the truck. And they're saying that if you pull those, they see you pulling, the satellites catch you or see that happening, it's an act of war, because the next step is launch.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So they were always very careful, like, do not go near those pin
Yeah.
locks.
Did you enjoy it then? Did you enjoy the 5 years?
Yeah, there were, I don't regret it.
Okay.
When I looked at it in the end, there were parts that, of course, I hated while we're going through, but it does toughen you up.
Yeah.
It does. You get comfortable with living on the edge, okay, of death. You are. That is the one thing. If this is a plane and over here you die, you get comfortable walking along that edge in the military, because you're very, very close. When you're that young, when you're 20, 22, you really don't have the tools to grasp everything. You're affected by it, but you don't have the tools to compartmentalize it.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to say, growing up the way that I did and what I saw and went through, as a young kid.
In South Central.
I was already prepared for it.
Yeah.
I had already
that makes a difference.
lived through a war.
Yeah. I'd
already seen people get shot.
Yeah, domestic war, so to speak.
One of the reasons that influenced my decision to leave, as I was telling him earlier, that I was at a party, okay, right, during the same time frame, my mother and, I'm moving out. I was at a party, and like any other party in Los Angeles, in this group, in this crowd, kind of South Central, black, minor, whatever the thing, there probably no violence inside, but let me tell you, somebody stepped on somebody's shoes outside, or somebody knew that this dude was going to be there, and when you stepped outside, there's probably a wall of about 15 dudes standing out there. And they're strapped, they have a gun, and somebody's going to get shot.
Yeah.
And of course, like many weekends, there was a shooting going on. We were so desensitized to it that we didn't even run, and we were just like, they're shooting over there.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And then we immediately, Andre, it was a friend of mine I was hanging out at the time, he says, man, what's wrong with us? He was like, we're not even running. I was like, I know.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we were trying to process at that time. We recognized, but again, we had grown up with it.
Right.
It didn't really destroy me. I think if you come from a small town, which most of the military does, right? I swear half the Army comes from North Carolina. All right, I'm serious. I could not believe, what? Every other, where are you from? North Carolina. North Carolina.
You guys know
North
each
Carolina.
other?
What's going on in North Carolina?
Yeah.
Nothing. Today it is a booming place. Back then, down south, there was, wasn't much opportunity. I came from Los Angeles. As a matter of fact, I got, yelled at one time for expressing this very point. We were doing a training session, and a recruiter says, she used to be a recruiter, and now she was part of the job that we were doing. And she says, I want to ask you young privates who just came in, I used to be a recruiter. What would make you re-enlist? And I was like, more money for college, and everybody else prior to me had said station of choice, more money. This guy who's a sergeant who was, kind of in charge of me starts yelling at me. He was like, is that the reason why you joined the Army? I was like, yeah. I was like, have you not seen the commercials? I don't know. What do you mean? Like, that's why I joined. Join the Army, get $30,000 for college.
Yeah.
I know I want to go to college. I know I'm going to go someday. I know it's expensive. Money. This for a couple of years, cash, no problem.
Thank you for tuning into this episode. If you're ready for meaningful personal growth and transforming your business or organization, visit our website at ASQEmpowermentServices.com for more information. Stay tuned for more exciting topics.